Hello, I'm Allie,
I'm Deb.
and welcome to another episode of Connected Conversations. Welcome back to another episode of Connected Conversations. I am so excited about our topic today because if you are in a relationship with a male, meaning maybe a partner, or you're wanting to get into a relationship, this episode is going to be one that you'll want to watch. Because Deb and I are going to talk about our journey with the opposite sex. Because, as Dr. Gray would say, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And I have studied and I'm some work with a wonderful woman named Allison Armstrong. And her words ring true to me all the time when my partner and I, Nick, might be going at it. And I'm like, he is not a hairy woman. He is not a woman. He thinks very differently than me. And it's been navigating that simple understanding of what happens if no one is misbehaving. And between the two of us, we're just very different and navigating life with the opposite sex. So Deb, how's your relationship with the opposite sex? I feel like this is like big can of worms.
Um, yeah, I think, as you learn and grow in any relationship, you have different perspectives. And I think for me, I know I'm very emotional. I make decisions based on emotion and kind of my intuitive nudges. And he's very logical. And I think that's why we complement each other so well. Because I think if I was with somebody who was super emotional or made decisions the same way, I think that might be a recipe for disaster. So I think the first thing is just recognizing how the other person makes decisions and being able to shift your perspective. And I know when it comes to any given situation, I can go down that rabbit hole of like sometimes worst case scenario, or this is really eating at me. And if I really shift my perspective to how he views different situations, of I can kind of shift my own perspective and say, like, he probably doesn't even think it's a big deal, to be honest. Like he probably doesn't even look at it the same way I'm looking at it. So if I can kind of look at it from his perspective when I'm kind of going down that rabbit hole, it can really alleviate, I think, a lot of problems. So I think that's one thing is understanding how they make decisions or understanding even the five love languages. I think that's a huge book if nobody's ever read it. Understanding how your partner receives love, how you prefer to receive love, because I think that's really important. If they like physical touch and you like time together, it's just understanding that and really making that effort if it's not your necessarily first love language. I think that really I think that really helps in any relationship is really understanding the other person, their needs, their wants, how they make decisions. What about you? Let's
Mm,
talk about you.
decision making. Yeah, well, Nick and I took this course. It was more for understanding men. However, he was on it, and when you're saying the questions, right? It annoys men. Like, why would you do that? Like with women, we're always like, oh, why? Like curious, we're talking, right? But with men, it's like an attack to the ego of like, and it's letting the biggest changer that and I still have to continue to practice, the biggest game changer has been asking a question and putting the tape over my mouth and waiting for the response and not starting giving multiple choice answers to what they're looking at, or then asking more questions. Because if we look at men as singular focus, they're very like mission focused driven. So when we ask a question in their minds are starting to deliver something. And sometimes I think women are quick with multiple things. They'll start like, why aren't you mad? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, they're just formulating an answer. And instead of saying, like, why would you do that? Like, help me understand the reasoning behind this. Because usually when I hear the reasoning behind why he's doing something, I'm like, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. Instead of being annoyed of like, why wouldn't you just do it this way? Because it's so much simpler and I can see it, or it's just the way I enjoy doing something and recognizing they do something different. Nick loves Nick loves throwing the love languages around. I think it's so sweet. You know, this is my love language. And I just love it because we do have different love languages. And I'll add to that, if you are exploring love languages, I would totally encourage you to take the test together as a couple. Like maybe make it a date night, like make it special, like order your favorite meal, cook a meal, or do something that you both enjoy, and then do the test. And when you're doing the test, it's not like, it's one thing to say like quality time is one of my biggest. And Nick can sit in the front of the TV and watch a movie with me. He's like, "Well, we spent like this is quality time," and I'm like, that is not quality time for me. That does not connect to my soul where I think that this is quality." And it's just a matter of, that's also my responsibility to communicate to him. Because to some people, maybe watching TV together is quality time. So I would take it one step further, like do the test together so you can identify, and then think about like, but what does physical touch look like? How much physical touch? How much quality time? If you enjoy gifts, like what would that look like? Because again, none of us are mind readers. So I know Nick enjoys like having some time in the morning, and it's like, okay, so how can we build this into a morning routine so that he's having his time too? And I found that to be really helpful. It's just a matter of over communicating. And as women, I would especially say, because our brains operate very differently, to, if we ask a question, put on the imaginary tape and wait for an answer. And men usually will tell you when they're done talking, because they'll say, "That's it. I'm done." And if you don't believe me, practice. Because when I first heard that, I was like, this is so silly. Like, this does not exist. And I practiced with a couple of men at work and with a couple of men that I just knew, like friends, asking them questions. And wow, the responses that I got were incredible. And they like, some men were literally like, "That's it." And they were done. They were done talking. Like they told me they were done. So those are, I love when you're pulling in the love languages, and I would just add to it because it's a huge game changer to understand your partner and appreciate them. I think appreciation would be another great topic.
Yeah, I do think like finding appreciation in the little things, and I try and do that throughout my day. But even with my partner, like I appreciate sometimes we'll just be driving and he kisses my hand, and I love it. And I always
Mm,
say like it's one of my favorite things that he does, and it's something so simple, but I appreciate it so much because it just makes me feel amazing. I think one thing that you touched on too is that they're not readers. Nobody's a mind reader. So when you talk about communication, effective communication, like don't just say I want time together or I want gifts. Like be specific. Like you have to tell them what you want or your expectation, or just communicating, I really like it when you put the dishes in the dishwasher and not leave them on the counter. And it doesn't have to be, I'm a big believer, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It doesn't have to be a fight all the time to get to have effective communication. Does not mean that you have to yell and scream your point across. You can actually have just a nice conversation, just saying, I would really appreciate it if you, and I think you're going to get such a better response than having that like volatile, like, oh, I'm so angry that you didn't do this. That's not how I communicate anyway, but I'm just such a big believer in effective communication, and that you don't have to yell and scream your point across, that you can say something with love and sincerity and compassion. And I think that reaps rewards.
the tone, right?
The
Because you can
tone.
say empty the dishwasher in a million different tones. And it comes down to, I think, with appreciation, like when you were saying, if we don't appreciate someone for something, again, like how do they know we enjoy it so much? And appreciation, I find with Nick and maybe other men, it'd be cool if there was men tuning in to let us know if this is true. Though appreciation is like fuel for his cup. Like he just wants to provide for me more. He wants to do more things for me. It's not for manipulation. It's just like he understands that wow, like this is what makes me happy. Because what I do know for sure, and I've heard it at a man, like a panel with men, men generally want women to be happy. They generally want us to be happy. And if you're getting to a point when your man just can't make you happy, number one, maybe take a look in the mirror of how you've been responding to them, take some accountability. Number two, maybe it's just that part is fizzled. But I know for sure that men want it to be happy. So when we let them know, like, wow, I appreciate this. This is what I really love. Like, I appreciate you when you do that. Like, it lets them know, and we can show that we're happy, that we're excited. And I think vice versa for myself being appreciated. Um, it's like, but I appreciate you doing that. I'm like, I don't care. If I'm emptying the dishwasher every day, maybe twice a day, I do want to be appreciated because I feel that it's those little things that people can start taking for granted in relationships. And that's where I think some bitterness, resentment, revenge often happens because they lose sight of like, oh, we've been together for years and now it's just expected that I'm the person that does XYZ without being appreciated. And that's where I think harbors a lot of yeah, just not appreciation. So I have told him like, yeah, I do want you to say thank you. Because like when I'm doing a whole bunch of things and that's something that I'm doing and all the laundry or whatever on top of everything, like that's what we've chosen. Or when he takes out the garbage, like he is generally the one that takes out the garbage, the recycling and all that jazz and taking care of it. Like I let him know, thank you so much. He's like, but that's what I always do. And it's like, no, I really appreciate it because that means that I'm not touching the dirty garbage. I'm not the one in the areas figuring out whatever. Like I don't want to do that. So again, like I appreciate him. And like when we let each other know, maybe sometimes too much or constantly, but I would rather over appreciate than take someone for granted. Because I think that can easily happen, especially as the long term life cycle of a relationship happens.
I love that. And I do think like over time, even I will say this, like even with my kids, like my
Mhm.
son cut the grass last night. I asked him to. I said, please. And when he was done, I said, thank you. And I think it's just like those little things that over time, I think we forget, or like you said, we take for granted. But I think those little please and thank yous, and I appreciate you, and I love you, all those things go a long way, reminding somebody that you're important to them. And whether it's with words, whether it's with acts of service, but I know when I cook my partner dinner, he always says thank you, and that's why I love doing it. I love cooking, and he appreciates it. He loves eating, so there you go. So I do think it is like those little things, right?
And one thing I just thought of, it's like making sure the other person can receive that. And I think that's where like we'll get into more nuances of like when you say this person compliments me, because I think it's really powerful when like if you like to give something and then that person likes to receive something, it's like the energetic match has been made. Whereas like imagine if you love to cook and the person only wanted to eat out or was super picky and didn't appreciate it. That's what I mean. Like that person isn't going to receive the same way. Or if I'm doing something and it's like just doesn't have that capacity to give it to me. Like if I needed something constantly from him and he's like, this is just not something I can provide, and that's something you'll hear from men, like those words precisely. I can't provide you that. Because for them, providing, protecting, and procreating are what their instincts are here for. So if a man knows like I simply am unable to provide for that, women, he's not lying. And you're not going to be able to shift shame, change him. It's just
And do you
that's
think that
where he's at.
means, do you think that means like if there's a part that a man can't, let's say he can't provide this certain thing for you, does that necessarily mean that he's not the right partner for you? Or can you achieve that through other relationships, like with friendships? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it would depend on what you want him to provide. And
Sure.
I would say, like, look at your deal breakers and look at things that you'd be willing to live without, and then be able to, yeah, go outwards. Like, I could provide that for you or someone else. However, if you look at the major deal breakers and if you're dating, like, please take a look at this. But if you're dating, what are your deal breakers? So for myself, like, getting married was a deal breaker. And when Nick and I talk, he's like, I just can't provide that for you. I was like, great, we're done. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean we're done? I was like, well, I know that that's something you're not going to provide for me. And I know that I have waited around for men in the past because they told me that straight on. And I thought I changed them. And that wasn't the case. So we had a conversation. And that's where, again, like deeper communication and understanding is very powerful, because then we got into a conversation of what did marriage mean to me? What does marriage mean to him? Because when he heard marriage, he thought, I'm not having another 500 people wedding. Like that was not what I was thinking. I was thinking of a different commitment. I was thinking about like what is important to me: children, alcohol and drug abuse, like really big ones. Like if you want children, and he's like, I'm unable to provide that for you. Full stop. Like he is unable to provide that for you. And very often, like I've seen it in myself, and I'm saying that for I've seen it in myself, where I'm like, especially like in my 20s, I would say, younger, like me, like, oh, because women are so easy, malleable, and changeable, because we want to be pleasing, right? Like generally speaking, we conform differently. And again, this is very instinct based. Not saying we're weaker, it's just the way that we've adapted in different sorts. Though I've definitely been like, oh, he'll change. No, he's not. So that's what I mean. Like the big deal breakers, I would
sure.
like women, like, make sure. However, if it's like, oh, like I can't think of smaller things, but yeah, maybe you can think of smaller things. And yeah, and I would say talking things out is not something I do with Mick. Like he wants to know what's up, and I'll be like, he's like, do you need me to hold the garbage can? Yeah, I just want to build things out. I don't need you to problem solve. I don't need your perspective today. I just need to get things out. However, if I have deep rooted things, I have my go-to girlfriends that like we're on the phone for hours and we're talking. And Nick knows that I also need that time, because that's my fuel. And again, if I'm looking for him to be my girlfriend, like the talking out girlfriend, like that's just me. He doesn't want to listen to me that much.
I love it.
No, I call it girlfriend. I'll call you Deb. Deb,
Okay, call me.
We need to
Call
chat.
me anytime.
We need to chat about something off the air.
I do think that's a very good point, though. Like, I think if you ask a man a question, believe his answer, or believe the actions that, like, they will show you, they will reveal to you who they are. So just trust that, believe that, and don't think that you can change them, because chances are they don't want to be changed. I love it.
I would laugh if one of my exes from the past said that. I feel like I've matured so much.
Anyway, I hope that you found some interesting tidbits. Look at your love languages, have effective communication, respect the boundaries, respect different perspectives. And I think in the very end, always be your genuine self. Don't try to be somebody different for anybody else. So I hope you've had a great day today. Don't forget to kickstart your Mondays with Allie and I every Monday morning, 8 Eastern. And we will be back next Thursday with another episode of Connected Conversations. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share with your friends and rate and recommend on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. There will be links to more great resources in the description.